My commission was simple: map the unmapped Echo Basin and deliver charts to the railroad by the first autumn snowfall. The canyon yawned open like a red rock cathedral, and I rode in with compass, paper, and a heart hungry for solitude. On the third day, a flash flood swallowed my camp, and I scrambled onto a ledge with nothing but wet leather and terror. When the water receded, my horse was gone, my supplies were ruined, and I was utterly alone in uncharted wilderness without help. I cried out, and the canyon threw my voice back in mocking harmony. Then a real hawk answered from the rim above. A shadow detached itself from a juniper, and a man appeared, his clothes the color of stone and his hair long. He didn't speak, only whistled 3 descending notes, and the hawk spiraled down to land softly on his outstretched leather wrist. I begged for help, but he pressed a finger to his lips, then pointed to a narrow game trail I'd missed. I followed him into a hidden alcove where ancient paintings of horses galloped across the sandstone, and I forgot my fear. He sat me by a small fire, handed me dried meat, and began drawing symbols in the earth with a stick. A rough circle with lines radiating outward meant safe, and I realized this silent stranger was teaching me a language. Over days he showed me the hidden springs, the edible roots, and the precise way to whistle a canyon wren's curious call. I learned his name was Kalen, scratched into a cliff wall next to a girl's name that was older and crossed out. When I pointed to the crossed out name, he turned away, and a grief so dense settled that even the hawk stilled. That night, by firelight, he drew the story: a young woman falling from a high ledge during an eagle's nest climb. The stick figure held his hand, then tumbled, and he drew himself weeping beside her body for many lonely, empty moons. He wrote in ash, "Since that day, no human words have come, only echoes and the hawk's cry for company." I touched the ash drawing and whispered, "I hear you," and his whole body slackened as if released from a trap. The next morning, I started mapping again, but now Kalen walked beside me, pointing out features with a gentle tapping stick. He showed me a natural amphitheater where his whistle bounced back 7 times, and we laughed at the strange, layered, joyful music. I drew his profile in my field journal, and he gave me a polished turquoise he'd carried since childhood as trade. Weeks passed, and I no longer missed my compass. I had learned to read the canyon from his expressive, silent hands. One evening, I sketched a heart in my journal and showed it to him, and he traced it with a shaking finger. He placed my palm flat against his chest, and his heartbeat pounded a language older than any alphabet ever invented by mankind. I kissed him then, beneath a ceiling of stars, and his lips tasted like cold creek water and 1,000 unspoken verses. He built me a shelter from driftwood and woven juniper branches, and I moved my bedroll beside his silent, sacred presence. A wandering prospector stumbled into our canyon and shouted at Kalen, who froze like a deer before a loaded rifle comes. I stepped between them and explained that this man spoke through whistles, and the prospector nodded and left us in peace. Kalen looked at me with such raw gratitude that my chest cracked open and flooded with a fierce, protective kind of love. I wrote letters to the railroad, resigning my commission, and the Canyon Post never carried a more joyful, certain life-altering message. We built a cabin in the alcove, and I began mapping the emotional geography of a man who spoke only through echoes. He taught me to whistle the dawn chorus, and I taught him to write his grief in a leather-bound book I gifted. His first written sentence was, "Elara walks on stone, but leaves no scar, only a path of blooming green." I framed that sentence and hung it above our hearth, and the hawk nested in the rafters like a guardian ghost. Our son, Kestrel, was born during a meteor shower, and Kalen wept without sound, his whole body trembling with awe. He taught Kestrel the whistle language before the boy could walk, and our baby laughed at the canyon's bouncing, cheerful reply. I sometimes missed human voices, but Kalen learned to hum a low vibration that I could feel when I pressed against him. 10 years into our hidden life, a geologist arrived to study the strata, and I translated between spoken word and whistle. He spent a month with us, And when he left, he wrote an article titled, "The Couple Who Speak Through Stone and Sky." People began hiking into Echo Basin just to hear Kalen's whistle ricochet off the walls, and he became a quiet legend. He never recovered his spoken voice, but he now shares his story with broken veterans who have also lost the will to speak. They sit in the amphitheater and learn to whistle their pain into the canyon until the echo returns it as something bearable. I now run a cartography school from the cabin, teaching mapmakers to listen to the land's own voice before they draw lines. Kalen carves tiny wooden hawks for every student, and each one contains a hidden chamber that whistles when you blow softly. I once asked him if he ever missed the words he lost, and he drew a picture of me smiling beside the heart symbol. Below it, he wrote, "You are every word I ever needed, and the echo never fades, and I still cry." Western Old Stories official now shares this truth. Some languages require no tongue, only a canyon's curve and a listening heart.